What's up, legends, and welcome back to another salmon video. Salmon, of course, is a reference not to the best fish in the ocean, but to UMLeague and the monthly ladder season that features a limited roster of heroes and maps, which lends itself to having a unique meta that is very different from the just wide open meta that happens with every single hero in the game available, like we see with some of the bigger tournaments. No, in the case of Salmon, it stands for Seasonal Analysis of Ladder Meta and Other Novelties. It's a handy little acronym I came up with, and what I do is a fun little exercise where I analyze this season's roster and try to predict which heroes are going to be good and which heroes are going to be bad. And of course, I will review my previous predictions from the previous month at the beginning of the video and then go over the current season. So this is a video for season 4, and I will also be reviewing my season 3 predictions as well. I have a bunch of stuff to talk about, including the real life reasons why this video is so late. I am aware it is the 8th of the month when this video is going out. I'll talk about those at the end of the video in case you want to stick around and listen, but I will say that I made these tier lists before the ladder season started, so it's not like I'm using some additional information from the first week to make my predictions. So without further ado, I know it's not Monday either, but let's go into my review of my season 3 salmon. So on the left, you can see my preseason tier list, and on the right, you can see my postseason tier list, and it's a little different. There are some similarities. So I put Bullseye on top of my preseason tier list because I knew I was going to be wrong, especially with the new Hell's Kitchen characters being included in that season. So I said, hey, if I'm going to be wrong, I may as well be wrong spectacularly, and I chose to put Bullseye on top because he is my favorite character in the entire game. He did not do so well, but he was still pretty decent. Electra was the best hero by far last season, with Dracula actually closely behind her. Yenenga was also really good. Daredevil and Little Red leading off the questionable category. That was pretty right by me. Achilles did better than I thought. Robin Hood did a lot worse than I thought he was going to do, and the Raptors and Buffy, to pretty much no one's surprise, kind of shat the bed a little bit. So I have some charts and graphs of my own creation from Excel that I'll be referencing right now. In addition to, I will talk about the matchup win rates from UMLeague for this season specifically, not the overall global data, except there's not enough room on the screen for me to put everything on there and have it look all pretty. So just know that these numbers I'm throwing at you are correct because they're from the source. So the reason why Electra is the best hero this season was because, well, her win rate. She won 67% of her games, which is 10 more than the next closest hero, which is just an insane win rate to have, winning nearly 7 out of every 10 games she plays. That's really, really good. In fact, the only bad matchup she had this season was Daredevil, who she beat 37% of the time, and we'll talk about why that is a little bit more when I'm talking about Daredevil specifically. But everyone else she was able to comfortably beat by at least 60%, and in most cases more than that. So she was just absolutely elite this season. I think those results will carry over into the global data when she can play every fighter available, but we'll see. Maybe there are some heroes that are equipped to deal with her, and maybe not. Either way, she's going to be a menace. Dracula making another surprise appearance in the top S tier category for this season. The reason for this, well, I guess the reason why he's in the best hero category, and there's 2 heroes in that category now, is because he was considerably better than Yenenga and Bullseye this season, but I didn't want to bump them down into questionable. I didn't want to have him in a tier by himself, so I moved him up with Electra in the best hero S tier and just had everyone else shift up as well. So Dracula is in this category as well because he has a 57% win rate on the season, which is 5 higher than the next closest hero, Yenenga. But it's not all about win rates, which we'll see in a little bit. This was very surprising to me because Dracula kind of gets wrecked by the Battle of Legends Volume 2 heroes, but it turns out I guess he's actually pretty decent into some of the Marvel heroes, which is good because Dracula is think most people's like one of their favorite fighters. He's certainly probably like just outside of my top 10. He used to be a lot more in my favor, but then just more Menace characters came out and he was pushed down a little bit. But like, it's Dracula. Like, he's fun to play, and so I'm glad he's getting a little bit more viable with some of these new releases. His claim to fame this season was being one of the best Bullseye counters available. He beats Bullseye 68% of the time, and Bullseye was the most played hero this season, so those numbers work out nicely. He also didn't really have that many bad matchups. His worst matchup by far is Yanenga, who he beats 14% of the time, which is absolutely horrible. But his next worst matchups were about mid to low 40s against Daredevil and Elektra. And those heroes are also getting played a lot. The new Hell's Kitchen characters were all in the top 3 in terms of plays. So if he hard counters Bullseye and then has close to even but slightly unfavorable matchups into Daredevil and Elektra, that's going to be pretty good for him against some of the most played heroes this season. And Yanenga was in the top 5 for plays, so yeah, that's not great, but the other 3 are really great. He also beat Achilles, who is 4th in plays. He wins that about 67% of the time, which is really good. I think his matchup with Elektra is a little worse than him winning 40% of the time, just because I've played both sides of that matchup only once, and it felt horrible when I was Dracula, but I guess the numbers don't really lie, so apparently that's a little bit closer than I would expect. So yeah, that is Dracula this season. He did surprisingly well, which is good to see. 57% win rate overall is very good. Yanenga, Big One, is leading the also great category because she is Yanenga. Her worst matchups this season were Bullseye, who she beat 35% of the time because she doesn't have feints, so some of his effects are really nasty when you can't cancel them. It makes sense that is Bullseye favorite, and apparently she only beat Elektra 13% of the time, which is really weird when you think about it, because you'd think cards like Stallion Charge and Point Blank would just be really good in that matchup, but I guess not. So I have only played that matchup once from the Elektra side, and I actually lost, but I was playing against Zero Skater's Yanenga. So how accurate is that? Not sure, but I am kind of scratching my head on why Yanenga gets dominated in this one. But other than that, she had really good matchup spread across the rest of the board, and even with Little Red in this season, it was a 50-50 matchup, mostly because Little Red does a lot worse in the ladder format because she doesn't get map and position, so doing the thing is a lot harder. But even with a bad Yanenga matchup with Little Red, that was still even, and everything else was 60% or higher. So yeah, Yanenga was decent, as she always will be. I think she has a really high performance floor. So the next hero is Bullseye, the most played hero this season, the hero near and dear to my very heart. He did not do as well as I expected. He was not the top dog, but I guess that was a little unrealistic. His bad matchups this season were Dracula, who he beat 32% of the time, and Little Red, who he beat 17% of the time. He also didn't really do that well against Elektra, who he only beat 34% of the time. So he had some bad matchups this season. Dracula and Little Red are just absolutely rough for him, and he had some mid to high 50% matchups against Achilles and Buffy and Daredevil, and against Raptors, Robin Hood, and Yanenga he had mid 60s win rate. So he didn't really dominate anyone. He is slightly favored in a lot of matchups just because of who he is. He plays super aggressively, and when his cards line up right, especially if he gets those schemes, he can just feel unstoppable. But he had some problems with Dracula and Little Red and Elektra, and not really being able to do that well against the top 2 heroes is not great, to say the least, but having a winning chance against everyone else is pretty good. And I think he was considerably better than some of his fellow peers who were below him. So yeah, Bullseye, also great. Leading off the questionable tier is Daredevil, and I guess this is what I meant when I said win rates aren't necessarily everything, because Daredevil had the 8th highest win rate rank out of 10, so he did not really do that well with a 43% overall win rate, but because he was played so much, he was the second most played hero this season by only 3 plays. He was really close to Bullseye. I think he commanded a lot of the meta to be warped around him, and this generally goes for all the Hell's Kitchen characters. The rest of the roster kind of will depend on how the Hell's Kitchen characters are in terms of viability, just because they're getting played so much because they're new. And Daredevil, at the beginning of the season, everyone was speculating that he might be Sherlock 2.0, where you just double maneuver all game and you play your cycling stuff and you just go infinite and you're really annoying. And it turns out that is not the case. Daredevil is a lot worse than people thought he was going to be, which I rejoice in because I despise this character, both playing as and against. I think there's just too much randomness and it's very annoying. So yeah, I shouldn't let my personal bias influence where I rank this character on this scale. Basically, Daredevil folds to aggression because he takes a while to get his stuff figured out, and he can't value block very well. So if he doesn't see some of his key cards, like his healing, he'll be in trouble. So he loses pretty badly to Achilles and the Raptors, and he doesn't really dominate anyone. His best win rate was against Buffy, but that doesn't really count. And like against Bullseye, Dracula, Little Red, Robin, and Yanenga, he basically was either even or unfavored in those matchups. And his only good matchup this season was against Elektra, who he beat 63% of the time because he has Through Adversity to ping all the hands on First Life, and then I guess he doesn't even need to ping them because his Devil of Hell's Kitchen is unfaintable for Elektra's sidekicks, because Elektra's feint is not in any, it's Elektra specific, so that will always go uncancelled. So he can actually cycle infinitely against those dudes, and it's just about not getting what's the word I'm looking for? Not getting killed on the resurrection combo shenanigans that Elektra can pull off. So yes, Daredevil was favored against the best hero this season, which gives him a slight edge over some of his competitors, but overall, he's not great, which I think is great because I'm not a fan of Daredevil. Little Red and Achilles are almost interchangeable here, and you might be saying, well, baked goods, you soggy old cow, why is Achilles this low? He was 4th in plays and 4th in win rate. Well, Achilles is really good into Buffy, Daredevil, the Raptors, and Little Red. And as you can see, none of them are also great or better. He has an even-ish matchup against Bullseye, which I think if the Bullseye player knows what they're doing and gets a little bit more lucky than you, should be Bullseye favored, I think, but only by a hair. And he does not do well into Dracula or Elektra or Yanenga. All those matchups were roughly 33% win rate for him, and those are the 4 best heroes this season, and he really has like an even-ish matchup with Bullseye and loses 2/3 of the time to everyone else. So that's why I think Achilles is a little bit less good than his win rate might suggest. Little Red, on the other hand, also really wasn't great this season. Her winning matchups were Bullseye, who she hard counters, Daredevil, who she actually beats 55% of the time. I would not feel comfortable playing that as Little Red just because Huntsman not having feints is a problem when Daredevil has Devil of Hell's Kitchen, and I played that matchup once as Little Red, and I guess it was close because you pound Daredevil, especially with all your auto damage, but it didn't feel good. And she also beats Raptors, what they weren't really played too much, and evenish matchup with Yanenga. Little Red really didn't do well against Achilles, which I think is a hard counter. Doesn't do well against Dracula or Elektra, and those were some of the most played or best heroes this season, which will be a problem. So why do I have Little Red above Achilles, even though her win rate is like 5 percentage points worse? Well, Little Red wins against Bullseye 83% of the time, and Daredevil 55% of the time. Achilles wins against Bullseye 46% of the time and wins against Daredevil 78% of the time. So overall, Little Red is more favored in both of those matchups, like combined, than Achilles is, and those are the most 2 played heroes this season. So I think on average, if you're taking Little Red in without necessarily knowing who your opponent is going to play, but like if they're playing the two most commonly played heroes this season, you should have better luck with Little Red than Achilles. So that's my logic there. They both suffer against Dracula and Elektra, so that's kind of how I'm weighting it. But I could see the argument for Achilles being higher because of his win rate, but I think it is a little misleading because he, like I said, his best matchups were Buffy, the Raptors, Little Red, and Daredevil, and like none of those characters were necessarily elite, whereas Little Red is a lot better into like Bullseye, who was the most played hero this season. So maybe flawed logic, who knows? We're not going to dwell on it super in length because maybe I'm wrong. The next three heroes were all just absolute crap this season, so I combined the Get Dumpstered with the Buffy set tiers, and we're looking at the Buffy dumpster now. Robin Hood, even though right now he has the 7th highest win rate, he was, I think he had one of the worst win rates for a long time this season, and maybe like the last week of the season he got a slight push in plays, which bumped him over some of the other heroes, but I think he was still horrible this season, and you can see that because he was the least played. The Raptors were also not really good. They had the overall worst win rate, which is very unfortunate for me as a big fan of the Raptors. I guess they're just getting outgunned and outclassed as every new set comes out, which is really sad. And Buffy, who is from the Buffy set, no explanation needed. So all these characters like did not really do that well this season at all. I guess the reason why Robin Hood is so high is because he had the I'm trying to remember my logic here. I'm looking at all the win rates. The Raptors really only did well against Daredevil. Robin Hood did well against the Raptors, which is kind of expected. Little Red, also kind of expected. Robin Hood has a slightly more favored win rate against Daredevil, but he gets absolutely stomped by Bullseye and Elektra, which makes a lot of sense. Buffy, on the other hand, well, Buffy Giles is just horrible, and Buffy Sander really only did well against the Raptors and Little Red, so I don't know, like none of them were really that great, and I think Robin Hood was just better than Buffy Xander in the matchups where Buffy Xander was good. Yeah, like against Daredevil, Little Red, and the Raptors, Robin Hood was just slightly better. So yeah, Buffy was just not great this season. The Raptors also not great, but at least their saving grace was they had a 74% win rate against Daredevil, and Robin Hood also not great. So Buffy Xander, Buffy Giles, which one should you pick? Well, I am a huge fan of Buffy Xander because I think he fits better into what Buffy wants to do and makes her kit overall, I think, stronger. Whereas Buffy Giles provides you with 3 copies of Eliminate the Impossible, otherwise known as Insight, and just 2 dead cards with Training, which is a card that I don't think I've ever seen played. Now, I'm a big anti-Giles fan just because my logic is whenever there's a matchup where you would want Buffy Giles, I would just rather play a different character, like any other character, because they're probably just better. And I think Buffy Xander has some key matchups like the Raptors and Robin Hood where she and he really shine because of the kit synergy. And I don't want to say, this is probably just confirmation bias, but like Buffy Xander did 14 percentage points better than Buffy Giles this season, so like I'm celebrating that. But I know like all the Buffy mains say that Buffy Giles is the way to go. I would just disagree because I would just be playing someone else besides Buffy, and I'd probably be a little bit more successful. The problem therein, and I guess this is like a long-winded rant that doesn't really have to do with this season, but the problem is Xander doesn't really have any like amazing cards. He has a red exploit, which is good because it's a little bit more firepower for Buffy, and a versatile 2 that can become a 6, so that's good for keeping him alive, and it's a nice big attack in case Buffy needs a little bit more. Buffy Giles doesn't have any like red, blue, or purple cards. He just adds schemes to Buffy's deck, and like I said, 2 of them are useless, and 3 of them are so good that Buffy Giles has a kill me magnet on him, and your opponent really wants to kill him as soon as possible so that you don't get much value out of those schemes. he can only block with the 3 skirmishes and 3 feints, and I guess 3 regroups in your deck. Xander has the same options, but with the 2 additional right-hand mans, which is often a 6 on defense. So it's a lot easier to keep Xander alive. Your opponent is less incentivized to kill Xander. So a lot of times Giles will just die, and sometimes you don't see his cards, and then they're just dead. And like I said, I like what Xander adds to the kit more than Giles, so that's just my thing. I just think Buffy is bad, and when you pick Giles, it just makes her worse. Funny enough, Buffy Xander, that main Buffy Xander is really good against Robin Hood, just because of all the ping damage and stuff. And funnily enough, that matchup didn't happen this season, but Buffy Giles and Robin Hood did. And Buffy Giles had a 0% win rate against Robin Hood. So that's just my take on this season. This is the tier list. We got a little bit sidetracked there, but yeah, let me know your thoughts on this tier list and how you would maybe change things. Because I know there are some things that might be a little questionable, like I guess the placement of Achilles and like how you would rank the bottom 3, but I think they were all equally trashed here. So yeah, really interesting season. It was a lot different than what I expected. Now let's talk about Season 4, the main purpose of this video. In case you are unaware, the 10 heroes in this season are Dr. Sattler and the T-Rex, because they are from the new Jurassic Park set, and whenever there's a new set release, it's going to be in the next available season of Ladder, so those characters get introduced into the lineup very quickly. We have InGen and the Raptors complementing the rest of the Jurassic Park crew. They're all 4 Jurassic Park heroes are in here, so they can get to know each other. Deadpool, who was the People's Champion this season, there will now be a monthly poll for who the public wants to see most in the season of Ladder, and Deadpool was the most voted character this season, so he is automatically included. And then rounding out the roster, we have Bullseye and Moon Knight, the other Marvel characters in this season, making their reappearances from their debut seasons. We have Bruce Lee, Beowulf, and Alice rounding out the roster. So a lot of intellectual property heroes this season. I think Beowulf and Alice are the only non-IP heroes, but I guess that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So interesting hero lineup here, mostly because I have no idea how Sattler and the T-Rex are going to be like viability-wise. So this will be a really interesting experiment. The maps for this season are Raptor Paddock and T-Rex Paddock, because got to get the Jurassic Park stuff in here. Hell's Kitchen making another appearance. We're getting more experience with these Marvel item maps, which is good. Just more information, more data. Always nice to see. Sarpedon, classic, making a reappearance in Ladder, and Baskerville. So do I think the maps will really impact this season? Well, there's I guess 3 characters that I would like to talk about in here. The first is T-Rex. The T-Rex is really good on Raptor Paddock because she ignores the one-way arrows, so it's a small map where she gets to ignore the disadvantage that other heroes have. So ripples in the water and just her largeness in general are crucial tools for her on that map. And in the same vein, Baskerville is horrible for her because she can't use the secret passages. So basically, if one player picks T-Rex, the map die roll will basically go down to who wins. And if the T-Rex player wins, she'll go to Raptor Paddock probably. And if the T-Rex player loses, your opponent will probably pick Baskerville. So her win rate is probably going to be close to even. Basically just matters if you win the die roll or not. Although T-Rex Paddock is probably also fine for her, whereas Sarpedon and Hell's Kitchen, I don't know, the left sides of both of those maps might be an issue for her. Bullseye really likes Raptor Paddock, kind of likes T-Rex Paddock, likes Hell's Kitchen, does not like Baskerville or Sarpedon, just in case you haven't seen my Bullseye map guide video. Maybe go watch that after this one. And InGen, who is the other ranged character. There's only 2 ranged characters this season, which is a little weird. InGen really likes Raptor Paddock and maybe can trap the bridges on Sarpedon, and I don't really have enough InGen experience to tell you which other maps are good, but I don't imagine T-Rex Paddock, Hell's Kitchen, or Baskerville are super great for him. So we'll see. In terms of my tier list for this season, I think Muldoon will be the best hero because I think his matchup spread is insane this season. Bullseye, I think hard counters Muldoon just because his range of 5 spaces kind of just ignores the workers and the traps, and he can attack Muldoon enough to run him out of blocks, which is just really good for Bullseye, except that's like the only Muldoon bad matchup this season. Muldoon, Moon Knight, Alice, and Beowulf were all in Season 2 together, I believe, and I think Muldoon got the best of all 3 of those other heroes, and in addition, I think Muldoon should be able to beat everyone else on the roster, so yeah, as the, I guess, one of 2 ranged heroes with some of the best zoning in the game, I think he will be the best hero this season. In the also great category, we have Moon Knight and Alice, who both fill similar roles as hard hitters with form-changing abilities, but if they are able to stay big, they should crush a lot of the other heroes this season, particularly Bullseye, the Raptors, Deadpool, and Bruce Lee, who can't really value block that well. If Sattler doesn't get her healing, she's probably going to die quickly too, and they can probably run Beowulf out of blocks as well. Against the T-Rex, these heroes probably need to just kill her before she can kill them, which I guess when they're big, they should be able to deal a lot of damage to the T-Rex. It's just with that large 27 health pool, that might take a while. And against InGen, I think they just get zoned, but the Moon Knight Muldoon matchup, I think, is not as Muldoon favored as I would like to believe. Maybe that was 63% overall, or in Season 2. I'm just pulling that number out of my butt. But I would feel comfortable playing Muldoon into both of those heroes. So, yeah, that's just my opinion. In the questionable category, we have Bullseye, who I think will be the primary Muldoon counter this season, but kind of gets trekked by characters that can hit really hard over his not great value blocking. He usually caps out at a 3, and he can't really afford to faint defensively against those heroes because he has 14 HP and no healing. So it's all about getting an explosive start for him and just not giving your opponent time to breathe and hit you back. And I think he should do pretty well into the rest of the roster, but that's just my opinion as a Bullseye main. The maps for him this season are a lot less good than they were last season, where they were just mostly all insane. So, yeah, he'll probably... I have tempered my expectations for him. I have not put him in the top spot as my prediction this season. Sattler and their T-Rex, I am unsure how well they will do, but, I don't know. I think the other heroes below them will do worse. This will be a really good experimental season to see how they fit into the meta, although most of these characters aren't necessarily top tier, maybe Moon Knight, but so yeah, I think they have a lot of room for upward mobility. Probably not going to be any worse than this though. Bruce Lee, also kind of the Bullseye problem where he will get smashed because he can't really block that well, although he can block a lot better than Bullseye can consistently, and anything can happen really with his Jeet Kune Do combos and the amount of card draw he has, but I am being a little bit conservative here and saying that on average, with average luck, he probably won't be doing super well this season, but he can have some explosive finishing turns, which can really hurt people like Bullseye, T-Rex, and Muldoon especially. Beowulf, he was in Season 2 with Moon Knight, Alice, and InGen, and he did not do well against any of them. And I think they're going to be some of the most played heroes this season. So, yeah, I don't think he can do that well this season, although he does have strong exhaustion potential against everyone else. Although I think he gets wrecked by Bullseye because Bullseye can just attack him and run him out of blocks. The Raptors will probably be an even matchup depending on how aggressive they can be at the start and how many blocks you draw. Sattler, I guess you should be able to hit hard, depends on if she gets her healing. You probably can exhaust T-Rex. And against Bruce Lee, I think you win if you just don't attack him back. The Raptors are coming off one of the most disappointing ladder seasons in history, which is only 5 months. But I have really lost faith in them. Deadpool might actually be better than them, but yeah, I don't think it's a good time to be a Raptors fan, unfortunately. And Deadpool, the People's Champion, I think it would be an injustice to every other character in this season if I ranked him any higher than last. And I guess using a bit of after-the-fact knowledge, he is 2-16 right now, so I think this was a right prediction. But yeah, maybe you keyboard warrior Deadpool mains can prove me wrong on this one and bring him back to a more slightly respectable win rate. So yeah, these are my thoughts for this season. I'd love to know what you think. Who will be the best hero that maybe I did not rank that high? Who will be the worst hero if it's not Deadpool? And what's going to happen in between? So I guess I'm sorry this video is so late. The reason is I was on a trip last week visiting my hometown in Illinois, and I'm back in Connecticut now, but basically I recorded this video and then just didn't edit it. And then I was like, it probably wasn't that good anyway. I'll re-record it 2 days ago on Monday, so that way I can actually use the Meta Monday idea. And then I just got busy with my last day there. I had to pack. Flew home yesterday, and I was like, well, I could edit that like audio, but I make a bunch of references to how it's actually Monday, so the video works well. And I was like, that's not going to fly anymore, so I have to re-record it again today on Wednesday so that it's not, I'm not making references to Monday. So yeah, that's why this is here. So I'm going to edit this right now and get it out to everyone ASAP as possible. So yes, 8 days into the season, we can enjoy this video together. Like I said, I did make all my predictions before the season started, and I guess I am aware that like Alice is just popping off right now. She's doing so much better than people expect. So yeah, I really haven't gotten that many ladder games in to begin with. I've only played 3 versus 0, and that was when I saw him in person. So probably in the next week, I should be looking to climb a little bit more. I'm currently bronze 2, I think. So yeah, I'm starting off a little bit behind everyone else. Like I think people are already in like the upper ranks of hero and gold, so that will be some catching up to do. I'm probably going to get flamed for the Deadpool stuff, but I don't know. Numbers don't lie. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Season 4. Hopefully everyone is enjoying their fish today. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. And as always, like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch. Don't forget to hydrate, homies. And yeet!